Yo guys, what is up? Maxing out Borderlands 3 video, and today we're doing a little bit of build refresh for Moze. Now, I haven't posted a Borderlands 3 build video in a really long time. Obviously, Wonderlands came out, so I focused on that game. But there was a lot of builds that I never got to or never updated for level 72 when Borderlands 3 increased its level cap, and so I wanted to revisit and try to make some new builds, one build for each character, and kind of do like a 2020 refresh of some new builds, some genuinely cool things. If you guys ever are coming back to Borderlands 3 or want something new to try or play, this is a Moze build that upkeeps 90% damage reduction at all times. It is one of the hardest to kill Moze builds, if not the hardest to kill Moze build that I've ever made. It does a lot of damage. It's very like not typical Moze build, as we're really focusing on melee. And yeah, it's really cool. Hope you guys enjoy the build video. Let's get right into it. So this build is a melee gun hybrid splash build. We're focusing on the Blade Fury gun. Now, the Blade Fury was added with the last vault card for Borderlands 3. If you didn't know how to get it, you go to the Bunker Master vault card and you can redeem yourself a Blade Fury. Now, this gun is super neat because it does gun damage and melee damage at the same time. It has, as you can see, the top number is my gun damage, the bottom number is my melee damage. And there's a lot of cool things that you can do with this gun because it does both. And I've like made a really in-depth video on this thing with Amara, but I wanted to focus on Moze because Moze has a lot of cool tricks you can do with it. The first trick is, if you did not know, Fire in the Skag Den is one of Moze's most busted skills. It gets Mayhem scaling, and it says it's bonus 15% damage, but at Mayhem 11, it's like 490% or something ridiculous. But as you can see, it says whenever Moze deals splash damage, she'll deal bonus incendiary damage. Now, this gun, the Blade Fury, actually does splash damage. It doesn't look like it because there's no splash, there's no effect. It does splash damage within a radius of 0. It does not actually deal any AoE damage, but it does inflict the splash effect, and that means that we can apply Skag Den to every one of our shots on this bladed weapon. And that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg in terms of like the crazy shenanigans that you can pull off here with this thing. But I thought that was super cool, and I didn't actually like realize that when I first messed around with this weapon on Moze. But yes, you can give Fire in the Skag Den to this gun, which makes it even more crazy. The next part of this build is the Mana Well Shield. This is also from the most recent vault card, or the last vault card, and it reads, on slam, drain your shield and give 70% damage reduction and bonus shock damage until your shield is depleted. Now, this build is kind of focused on the shield in a few different ways. So first off, when we slam, we're going to get, it says 70, that's not true, it's actually 90% damage reduction, and we get 100% shock damage at all times, added to on to all of our stuff. Think Revolter. 1 second, I need to enable my Guardian rank so I can actually slam from a normal height. But we get this like blue border. It's going to constantly drain our shields. It is percentage based, meaning if you have a bazillion shield, it's still going to chunk away at your shield kind of at the same rate. But when we slam, it's going to constantly drain our shield, give us that damage reduction, and give us 100% bonus shock damage. Now, this is kind of where things start to come together. We are using the Knife Drain static charge. The Knife Drain is the most important part here. There are a bunch of different relic options. I kind of want to cover like the core of this build, and then I'll get into like other things that you can use. But this will imbue our melee with lifesteal. We're getting 75% melee lifesteal, which is way too much lifesteal. But basically, every time we shoot with the Blade Fury, it's going to deal that melee portion, and it's going to heal us. However, that health is going to go to our health and not our shields, except for the fact that we're wearing a Bloodletter. A Bloodletter reads, if Moze would be healed, she gains shield instead. If she would regenerate health, she also gains shield regeneration. So basically, every single shot from our Blade Fury is going to proc our shield to refill completely. Remember, we're getting millions of damage per shot and getting 75% melee lifesteal, so our shield will completely go to full. And I don't have a god roll Mana Well, I just randomly got this one, but it's got an amp part. Ideally, I think you can get triple amp on this thing. I'm not sure, but if you can get triple amp, me just getting amp alone Every single shot that I fire is going to get that amp, because every single shot is going to heal my shield up, and then I shoot, and then I get the amp. And it does like a very cool feedback loop, as well as we got this static charge part, which is going to chain lightning. Basically turns the Blade Fury into a brainstormer to give us crazy clear speed. And then on top of that, with our gear, we're also using a few different things that you can use, or you don't have to if you don't want to. I opted in to use Terror here because of the while terrified, it deals 75% bonus cryo damage. While wearing the Mana Well, I have the melee attacks of a 25% chance to apply Terror. I'm using a rad reoccurring hex with while terrified, gain increased damage and fire rate. The more terror you have, the higher the bonus. This damage will apply to both of our melee and our gun portion, and basically all of the damage that we're dealing, and more fire rate equals more DPS. But we're also able to use the bonus cryo damage. Now, I like both the URED 100% bonus radiation and the cryo. It's really nice to be able to swap between both. I don't have my skill point spec. I'll go into my skill tree in a second, but we are going to be speccing down into superior firepower. Whenever Moze or Iron Bear inflicts a status effect on an enemy, they gain increased status effect damage. This status effect damage is flat damage increase for cryo damage, meaning when we fully spec into this, at 5 stacks, we're going to be dealing 100% more cryo damage, which is really nice because cryo obviously synergizes with melee, and when things are frozen, they take 300% increased melee, and we're getting another 100% increase for superior firepower for any of our cryo stuff, which like you can lean into more. For example, you could use, where is mine? I've got a bunch of random stuff on me. But for example, you could use something like this Cryostone static charge. Now this bonus melee on our melee is doing bonus cryo, getting 80%, which is getting buffed. And also we can still, even not using the knife drain, we can still spec into Russian offensive and heal ourselves every shot while we're sprinting around. So there's like a lot of different kind of gear that you could use for this build. You don't need to use Terror. You could use a cryo hex. I was just using a rad hex for the rad explosions. So when I throw this thing, things will explode in radiation, which gives me more AoE clear. You could use a cryo one. I like using the URED Blade Fury. Don't always need to be using the bonus cryo, just because rad explosions will help us clear faster, in addition to using the static charge. But you're definitely going to want a bloodletter for this. You need one. Ideally, as many points as possible into Thidran line, so we can get as much shield as possible. And then any extras into Phalanx Doctrine and Desperate Measures are really great to have. And lastly, for our skill tree, if you want to use Terror, I know some people don't like Terror effects or Terror cryo just because you have to have your screen green, and some people don't like that screen effect. If you don't want to do that, I would recommend taking these points out of purple and putting them into the green tree and going all the way down to Forge and click, except for the road, the Iron Bank. Basically, you have to reload a lot less. However, if you do want to use Terror cryo, which I think is the most interesting way to use this build, just because cryo is great for melee, and Moze is unique in that she can buff her cryo damage by 100% with superior firepower. This status effect damage is flat damage increase for cryo, which is amazing. Unfortunately, there are some throwaway skills in purple. For example, Explosive Fury just doesn't work. Harmonious Havoc we can't pick into because our guns, our Blade Furies, do not have an element, so we don't actually benefit from this skill. So there are some throwaway skills, but getting superior firepower I think is worth for the cryo damage. In the blue tree, we're going to fire in the Skag Den for that nice extra fire damage and means of destruction. When we throw grenades, we can get some more back. You could put these points into Stainless if you wanted, or toward cross promotion. Red tree, very important. I think this is the only tree that no matter what you do, I think it's nice to have maxed out. We're going to get a ton of extra shields in this tree, which is going to allow us to survive even more, even with 90% damage reduction. If you only have 100k shield, a barrel or an enemy could possibly take you out. When you're sitting at 300k shield after killing an enemy with 90% damage reduction, you can literally stand still on the Malawan Bridge and not have to worry about enemies killing you at all. It's pretty crazy. And Tenacious Defense is really nice because sometimes when you proc your shield, there's no way of actually stopping this, like, the shield going down if there's no enemies to shoot at or nothing to lifesteal off of. So Tenacious Defense gives us the kick of our shield, keeps us alive, and gives us that gun damage. So that's really nice. If you don't want to use Terra Cryo, definitely spec into the green tree. You do have to reload on this build. I know that's like a cardinal sin on Moze. The best thing you can do is get these magazine size roll on your artifact, which will make it so much better. 73% magazine size is crazy. I think you can get a magazine size roll on your class mod. I don't have that on mine, but yeah, there's some nice cozy things you could get if you want more ammo regen, basically in green tree, but we're kind of going for as much damage as we can squeeze out, and so that's why I spec'd it that way. Lastly, for boss killing, this build is solid for boss killing. You can take it in, your boss won't kill you, and you can kill them relatively quickly. If you do want to kill bosses faster, there are some gear changes that you can do. For example, you can swap to a Revolter. Revolter is 200% shock damage. Mana Well's only 100, so like that makes a difference. The Bloodletter is very solid for damage, but if you want to go the absolute most damage you can get on Moze, you can swap to a Flare class mod with the Iron Cub. Iron Cub will give you this 100% more damage. Revolter will give you a bunch of shock damage. Cryostone or whatever you want to use is good. I found the Pearl to actually be pretty impressive on this build, but yeah, there are some like slight modifications that you can make if you're strictly trying to do bossing, but this build is really a takedown runner. It's good for the Malawan takedown, it's good for the Guardian takedown. You don't have to worry about dying to enemies. You can mob really well. It's just I keep saying it, but it's like a comfy build. Like sometimes on Moze, I always die to my own damage. I am killing myself with the grenades I'm throwing. There's splash damage explosions. This build, you can kind of just chill out and shoot things and just stay alive and still do like really respectable clear times. So yeah, guys, that is it for the build refresh for Moze. I hope you enjoyed that. The chat ended up naming this build Dagger Hose Moze, which it's definitely a name, but we're sticking with it. Let me know if you guys want to see any other builds for the other characters. I'm working on a Jacob Zamara kind of refresh, I think is what we're going to do next, as well as hopefully some God of War videos. I'll catch you all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.